Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be finally continuing with our series, Defending the Liar. This is a series in which I'm going to offer some defenses for the liar's paradox and the liar's revenge paradox in the face of some objections offered by you, the subscribers and the viewers out there. So in this first video, which is long overdue, we're going to be taking a look at Frank Dunleavy's problem and objections to the liar's paradox and the liar's revenge paradox, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the use-mention distinction. Now, one of the reasons that I waited a while to do this video was I wanted to get my short series on the philosophy of language and the puzzles of the philosophy of language out there before doing this video, so that we could reference Frege's theory of sense and reference, as it were. So in this video, we're going to learn a little bit about use and mention, and then we're going to talk about Frank's attempted solution to the liar's paradox and why it doesn't work. So, first off, Frank is going to use a distinction that he refers to as the use-mention distinction. This is a very common distinction in philosophy and philosophy of language. The basic version of this maps onto the sense and reference distinction that is offered by Frege. If you don't know what I'm talking about with that, check out my video on Frege's theory of sense and reference as part of the 4 puzzles in the philosophy of language series that I did a little bit ago. So, when a term or article of language is being used, then it refers to its reference, the thing that it's referring to. So when I say statement 1, Venus is a planet, in this statement, the word Venus is used since it's referring to the reference of the term, the planet, not the sense or the word Venus. Note that Venus isn't in single quotes, so we know we're not talking about the word. The letters V-E-N-U-S are not a planet, at least in any sense of the word planet, and therefore we're talking about the referent, the thing out there that we use that term to name or refer to. We're using the word Venus. Mention, on the other hand, so when a term, article of language is being mentioned, it refers to its sense. So when I say Venus, in single quotes, has 5 letters, this statement, Venus, is mentioned, since it is referring to the sense of the term, the word Venus, not the reference, the planet. Okay? So, the important distinction here is between things that refer to the word we're talking about and the actual object that that word refers to. Because clearly, Venus, the word, is very different than Venus, the planet. The word doesn't orbit the sun, and the planet doesn't have 5 letters. Now, Frank is also going to introduce a new term that he's going to call a pure term. So, we would see this in this example. Vulcan is a planet. This statement, Vulcan, fails to refer to anything, since the hypothetical planet Vulcan that was used to explain the perihelion in Mercury's orbit turned out not to exist. Since the referent fails to exist, the thing that's referred to by the term is going to be called a pure term. This by Frank. Now, Frank is also going to offer 2 rules that he's going to use to construct his argument, the rule of replacement and the rule of truth. So, the rule of replacement goes as follows. One may always replace a term mentioning another term with the mentioned term. The new mention becomes a pure term. He uses the following example. This proposition is interesting, can be replaced with, in single quotes, this proposition is interesting. So we're replacing the words this proposition with this proposition is interesting, the thing that it's referring to, and the mention is going to become a pure term. His rule of truth is that pure terms do not bear truth. Statements like, that is interesting, or that is true, do not bear truth as the term that fails to refer, and therefore is a pure term. Now, before I get into Frank's arguments, I want to stop, because there's a lot of problems with some of the definitions and distinctions we've offered here, and I think it's just going to be confusing to a lot of viewers to dig too much in the arguments, not working with stable definitions. So, there are a number of problems with these basic definitions and rules that are going to preclude any success of the arguments to follow. So we're just going to stop here and offer a number of sufficient objections to deal with this position as it is a problem to the liar's paradox. So, pure term seems suspect to me for a number of reasons. First off, it seems that the statement, a unicorn has one horn, is importantly different from the statement, a unicorn has two horns. Yet, if pure terms are to be lumped together as not bearing truth, then neither of these statements can bear truth. There's also some worries about his examples of that is true. The word that is what we would call a demonstrative, and it seems that in certain cases, if I am pointing to a true statement and saying that is true, my utterance, in fact, is true, because I'm referencing something. The word that in absentia, without other words around it, or without a context to have it in, may not refer to that term. But if I'm pointing to a statement on the board and saying that is true, it would seem that most people would want to say that what I'm saying, the statement that is true, does succeed in referring and does succeed to be true. So it seems that just saying that whenever you have those kind of utterances, they're going to be not true is quite problematic. Also, one might worry that it is not the terms themselves that bear truth, but rather the statement. But this can easily be rectified by changing the definition to statements that refer to pure terms that fail to bear truth. So, basically, instead of saying that a pure term doesn't bear truth, if it fails to refer to something and is a pure term, statements with pure terms in them fail to bear truth. However, though this tweak may help some of kind of the technical problems going on here, this exposes a deeper problem with the argument. If statements that do not bear truth are neither true nor false, what are they? It seems that this is once again creating kind of a third part of logic, or a third possibility for statements to be, which is worrying, of course, and it brings up the liar's revenge paradox. So, we're also going to have some problems with the rule of replacement. So one may always replace a term mentioning another term with the mentioned term, and the new mention becomes a pure term. So, take statement 4. Statement 2 in this video is true. According to the rule of replacement, we can replace this with Venus, in single quotes, has 5 letters, is true. And yet, Frege is going to tell us that while clearly the first statement is true, the second statement can't be, because in statement 5, what we've replaced statement 2 with must be a pure term. And pure terms can't bear truth, or statements with pure terms can't bear truth. Therefore, it's not true that Venus has 5 letters is true. Clearly, this is going to be problematic unless we've come up with another way to spell Venus. And in fact, this can be used for any kind of statement like this. So the rule of replacement definitely reaches way too far and is going to make most of our language irrational and impossible. And without this rule, the following argument against the paradox is going to just fall flat. And yet there's absolutely no way for us to sustain this rule and maintain a coherent argument. And even if they did not, when dealing with the liar's revenge paradox, Frege doesn't realize that the L from L or not T will be whatever we decide the status of statements with pure terms to be, not just true or false. Basically, take statement 6. This statement is either false or it contains a pure term. If it contains a pure term, it cannot be true, but it must be true by the way the statement explains itself. If it's false, then it must be true, and if it's true, then it's either false or it contains a pure term, which makes it not true. The point is, there's no way for us to assess the truth value of 6 in our understanding of pure terms. So while a valiant effort, Frege, while we got to learn some interesting things about use and mention, without your rule of replacement or another category for non-truth-bearing statements to fall into, the argument will not succeed. It's important to note that Frege has realized many of the problems with his argument, and he's left the video up, though, to kind of be a learning exercise and a learning experience for anyone that wants to check it out. And it seems to me that it's a useful video, at least to begin to understand some of the concepts in philosophy of language, and at the very least, the use-mention distinction. Okay, now a challenge to all of you out there. This challenge is still open and will continue to be, but I can't promise my responses will be timely in any way, shape, or form. Clearly, it was quite a while since the original challenge was issued. Make a video explaining your solution to the liar's paradox in all its forms, including things like the revenge paradox. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch my series from last October's Paradox Month. If you have a strong or interesting argument, or just have some concepts that I want to play with in a series or a set of videos, I'll do a response video and I'll include it on this very playlist, Defending the Liar. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.